what is a healthy heart? Generally, the definition of a healthy heart, or Qalbun Saleem, is a heart that doesn't have competitors with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within it. And what does it mean to have a competitor with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? A competitor can come in different forms. A competitor can be an idol, as we know sometime, during the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they actually worshipped idols. During the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, they actually worshipped idols. However, there are different types of idols as well. For example, we can take money as a competitor with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts. We can take our careers as a competitor with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts. We can take other people. We can take the creation. Sometimes we can actually take ourselves as a competitor with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts. Our own desires, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran, where He says, do you see, what's translated as, do you see the one who takes his hawa, his inclination or his desires, as his ilah, or his object of worship? So these are people who are taking their own self, their own inclination, their own ideas and opinions and desires, that's the meaning of hawa, as their ilah. And an ilah is something that you worship. It's something that you put at the center of your existence, at the center of your heart, at the center of your life. And so it isn't only stone idols that we worship, but we can worship other things as well. And sometimes it's my own self. It's my own opinion. Sometimes we become so attached to our own opinions, to our own ideas, to our own intellect. Some people worship their own intellect, that they believe that everything can be figured out within their own mind. And unless I can figure it out, I'm not going to do this or that commandment because it doesn't make sense to me. You know, when you hear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His messenger said something and your reaction is, but that doesn't make sense to me, that's a worship of your own intellect, because we are slaves of God. We're not slaves to our own selves. We're not slaves to our own understanding and our own intellect. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we know that Allah has said something and we know that the Prophet ﷺ has said something, then our response should be sami'na wa ata'na, we hear and we obey. It shouldn't be that, but my intellect says this, or my opinion says this, or my desire says this. Those are competitors with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the heart. And so Qalbun Saleem, a healthy heart, a sound heart, is a heart that doesn't have these types of competitors, whether they are money, or they're your career, or their status or fame, or yourself, or your own opinion, or your own desires, or your own intellect, or other people. So it's really, really essential that we understand the concept of Tawheed is deeper than just saying that I only worship God in the sense of prayer, because Tawheed is also having Allah alone be our deepest love and our deepest fear, our deepest hope should be only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our trust ultimately in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is all part of having a healthy heart, and it's all part of what Qalbun Saleem really means, is that we don't have other things that we put at a place where only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be. Allah tells us in the Quran that there are people, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ, that there are people who take rivals with Allah, and dead. They love them as they should only love Allah. So here you see that the idol isn't a stone idol that they're praying to. It isn't somebody that they're even saying that Allah has a partner. But this type of rival is a rival of love. It's a rival in the heart. It's an idol of the heart, where you're loving something as you should only love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether that something is your children, whether it's your spouse, whether it's another, a family member, a parent, or whether it's your career, whether it's your money, whether it's power or status. Now, we live in a social media world where a lot of us, we worship, status, or we worship fame. There was like a a study that asked millennials what was their what was their goal in life, and the vast majority of them said to be famous. like that's actually the ultimate goal that these people have is fame. That's a type of worship that becomes the most important thing. And then of course we see the things that people will do for fame, right? The weird stuff that we have that people will do, that people will post, that people will put out there in order to be famous, actions that they'll take in order just to be famous. So that is a type of worship, and of course there are degrees, and we have to look within ourselves. This process of purification, this process of tazkiyah, is active. It's not something you just read in a book. You take notes, you give speeches about, you write cool statuses about, you make cool memes about, and that's it. It's an active process. It takes work, and it's not linear necessarily. It's bumpy. Sometimes we're going to be going up. Sometimes we're going to have dips. But it's something where we're gonna mess up, and then we need to get back up and try again. We're going to fail, and we need to keep going. But it's something that we have to get into and do. It isn't conceptual. It isn't just conceptual. It isn't just something that we can know here or know, speak on the tongue, but rather it's an active concept that we have to actually do. No one will get to this process, to this Qalbun Saleem, a healthy heart, without actively working at it, without putting in effort. So I just want to re-emphasize that so much of what we're learning here is it's knowledge, right? It's information. It's like your students, and you're learning these concepts. These are conceptual, but we have to implement these concepts if they're going to fulfill their ultimate purpose. To just learn and memorize, it's not going to work with this type of knowledge. This knowledge has to be transformational. It has to be something that we take, we live, and then we transform through that implementation of knowledge. It can't just be something we hear or read or speak or memorize. It has to be something that we're doing.